Hey, welcome to Postcards from Within. My name is Tanya Misselt. I'm the director of the River Falls Public Library. We are in the middle of a winter wellness series, and this is part of that series. If you're able to, um, gr- if you're playing the game, the Winter Wellness Series game, you get 2 tickets for attending this or watching it from home. We also have Tara Merdzek here. She's a caregiver support coordinator for Aging and Disability Resource Center from St. Croix County Human Services. She will be in the back here providing pamphlets and information resources available for our community, and she'll be leaving some behind for people to pick up too. So I want to introduce you to our presenter tonight, Savita Harjani, and she is an Indian American who was born in Bombay, grew up in Delhi, and has called the United States her home for the past 38 years. She is a lawyer by training, having obtained her Juris Doctor from Hamlin University. She worked in corporate America, played in the world of high-tech startups to creating a unique legal consulting model of strategic legal management. She paused all of this in 2016 to become a full-time caregiver for her mother, and she moved to India. Her caregiving experience led her to write her memoir, Postcards from Within, Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human, and she is here today to share her journey of becoming an author. Savita now writes and is a hospice care provider. Please welcome Savita Harjani.
Tanya, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Hello, everybody. I'm Savita Harjani, and thank you all for being here. And it's great to meet you, Tara, from the Aging and Disability Resource Center. And this evening, I'm here to talk about my book, Postcards from Within: Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself, a little bit about the book. This memoir, Postcards from Within, is a very personal journey. It captures thoughts, my innermost thoughts from the very depths of my soul and my heart. So I'd like to share those with you and read a few passages to you somewhere in the middle of this presentation. Sorry, give me a second here. A little bit about me. I think I'm mostly going to skip this slide because um, Tanya did such a fine introduction. Thank you so much for that. And so, yep, that's all, everything that Tanya said. So that's me in a nutshell. And I'll move to the next slide. Postcards from Within: Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human. I published this book last July, and it's my debut work. Postcards from Within is a memoir of an introspective journey of self discovery that I took as my mother's caregiver. It is a mother daughter story of love, loss, and grief. It is a journey where I encountered my failings, my vulnerabilities, but also some strengths I didn't know I had. And Postcards tells a story of one of the most challenging times in my life. It also um, expresses that caregiving and all these emotions are a very shared human experience and expression, and that we as humans are more alike than different. And I'm not unique in being exposed to life, but in Postcards from Within, I express these emotions in my own unique way. It was an absolute privilege to take care of my mother, and I'm very grateful that I have this memoir that captures those memories. The caregiving years. As Tanya said, I moved to the United States 38 years ago. I was 20 years old. I've told you my age. But even from that day on, I always anticipated what would happen when my parents become vulnerable and need my support. When I moved, they were young and vibrant, but at the back of my mind, I always had this thought, how are we going to manage that? I'm in the United States, they are in India. And there is some 30 years later, that day did arrive, that moment arrived where we had to make the decision and the choice of how we were going. In India, there's not that much of an infrastructure for elder care. The traditional model is joint families. Parents look after their parents, grandparents look after the grandchildren, and everybody sort of gets sorted. But that model is also crumbling. In any case, India was so far away for us to manage from here. So my husband and I decided that I would move to India, take care of mom, and he would manage everything from here. So we did that. My mom had chronic kidney disease. We we did peritoneal dialysis at home 16 hours a day for life. So concurrently, she was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. But my mom, she was such an amazing woman. She was just a joy to care for. Despite all her pain and suffering, she was just a trooper. And it's a privilege that I am so grateful to hold. Sorry about this noise here. I would like to share with you why I wrote. So, needless to say, it was a really challenging time in my life, in mom's life, in everybody's life. And I was experiencing life from a very different perspective than I had before. And I started observing life in a different way, experiencing things in a different way. And I started, just writing was the only outlet I had. I did not want to share what I was going through with my husband or my other loved ones because I didn't want to burden them. My husband had enough on his plate being here alone and managing everything. I didn't want to share with my mom because I didn't want her to feel like a burden, which she wasn't. And plus, it was my journey, and there was not much anybody could do to lighten my load. In addition, life was teaching and I was learning, and I did not want to lose the insights that I was gaining. So, I was gaining those with some pain involved, and I didn't want to you lose that learning. So, but one of the biggest gifts that life gave me in the form of an insight was that not all challenging times are bad. They're just tough. They can even be the best of times. And this time with my mom was so incredible, so challenging, but I would not change a moment of it. Why I decided to publish. I, like I said, I started writing as a coping mechanism. It was a journaling thing for me because anytime some thought occurred, I would write it down, and I pretty much my book was written on this device. So love, loss, and grief are not unique to me. And I felt so alone on my journey. And I suspect that a lot of caregivers do. And my hope is that by sharing my journey, the others going on similar journeys might feel less alone on their solitary journeys. But the more compelling reason for me to publish was my mother's blessing. When my mom used to see me engaged with my phone, she had sort of figured out what I was doing. And on occasion, she would ask me to share what I had written. And I would on occasion. And she was a very thoughtful, intelligent woman, and she would challenge me. She would ask me. We would engage in debate. But pretty much, she liked how I expressed myself, and she always encouraged me to write. A few days before she passed away, she started to become very withdrawn. And actually, the day before she passed, she was completely withdrawn. I was sitting by her feet, rubbing them gently, and I started to write in my phone. And I said that perhaps there was something lacking in my care of you, that you're no longer talking to me. There was something in that moment that maybe she sensed what I was feeling. And she was lying on bed, and I was on a low stool, and she beckoned to me, and I went to her, and she placed her hand on my head. And very softly, she whispered, Tulik, in Hindi, which means you write. And those were her last words to me ever. And those were her last words ever on earth. So this is a blessing um, that she blessed me with and has delivered in the form of this book. I'm very grateful for that. I'd like to now read a couple of passages from my book. The first one is called Role Reversal. I did not have biological children of my own. And I think my mother gifted me motherhood, the experience of motherhood, because I took care of her as my own baby. So I'd like to read this poem to you, if I may. Role Reversal. Watching a parent fade is the opposite of watching a child grow. Ma fades and extinguishes a little every day. She is my baby now. Ma experienced a labor of joy when she brought me into this world. I experienced a labor of sadness as I helped her exit this world. When I was little, Ma exclaimed, "Oh, look, she can stand on her own now." When Ma was 85, I exclaimed, "Oh, Ma can't stand on her own anymore." Ma said about me, "She ate her first solid food today. She is growing up so fast." I said about Ma, "She can't eat solid foods anymore. Let's try liquids. Maybe she'll be able to swallow." Ma was so excited. My baby is responding. She's starting to understand language. I was so sad. I think Ma is starting to lose comprehension. She is staring at me blankly. Ma called my father and gushed, "Our baby has said her first word." I called my brother and said, "Our mother has forgotten her first word." Ma exclaimed, "Yay, Poopy's on her own for the first time." I asked Ma, "Is it time for a conversation about diapers?" Ma exclaimed with joy, "It is so exciting to watch her grow every day." I whispered with pain, "It is so sad to watch her extinguish a little every day." Ma said thoughtfully, "Before you know it, she will be all grown up and leave me." I said with grief and finality, "Before you know it, she will have extinguished and left me." The next passage that I'd like to read is when I was taking care of Ma, a lot of people blessed me. They said, "You're a good person. You're a good daughter. You're taking care of your mom." And I started to, that's on page 57. And I started to feel good about myself. Like, yeah, I'm a good person. I'm taking care of Ma. And this thought occurred to me, and it was a humbling thought. The desire to be good is compelling in most people. Everyone likes to be thought of as a good person. Being good is not always easy. Every once in a while, I succeed at being good and then feel good about it. One day I died and reached the land of gods. To borrow from Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling, upon arrival, I was ready to be sorted into my future place of existence. At the high table were seated Buddha, Shiva, and Jesus. Playing McGonagall's part was Lord Krishna. He placed the sorting hat on my head. There are three houses in Karma School of Humans and Humanity: heaven, hell, and earth. As soon as the hat was placed on my head, it said, "Difficult, very difficult. I see a lot of good, but where to place you?" "Not hell, not hell," I kept muttering. "Not hell, you say? You will have fun there. A lot of your friends are there. But if you're sure, better go back to earth. Because even though there was good, you were aware of the good. There was some arrogance and holier than thou attitude. You felt superior about being good. Earth it is. Maybe next time you will just do good for the sake of it and not be superior about it or judge others. You're not there yet. Back to earth I came. Wah, wah, a new baby is born. And that's how reincarnation works. And for me, the journey commenced anew. Maybe I will do better this time. And the next passage I'd like to read is my evolution as a caregiver. My mother had so much trust in me, and she placed her life in my hands completely. She did what I told her. Whatever medical decisions had to be made, she just deferred to me. And I felt the weight of that responsibility. And in wanting to do the best for her, I was a firm caregiver. So this passage describes my evolution as a caregiver. I evolved as a caregiver over the period of 5 years that I cared for mom. One of my more insightful insights was that the cure cannot be worse than the disease. When I started caring for Ma, she was very alert and normal in every way, other than the fact of her disease and the necessary care for it. I was a firm caregiver, and Ma surrendered to me completely. She placed her life in my hands. She loved food, and we put her on a strict diet. One morning, as I consumed an entire bowl of nuts, one of Ma's favorite things, I remembered that I would give her two cashews and two almonds and no more because they were not good for her. Then, as time went on, her health declined to a point where she would not eat anything. I took all rules off the table. And in 2020, the last year of her life, I begged her to eat anything that her heart desired. And her heart desired nothing. I hope and pray that I did right by her. I love you, Ma. Please forgive me if I made the last few years of your life harder than they should have been. Thank you. This is the woman who gave me life. This is the woman I still love and adore. This is the woman I miss every single day. This is my mother, Kanta Gupta. My hope for Postcards from Within is some people who've read the book and have related their experience of the book back to me. And I want to share some of those sentiments with you. A friend wrote, certain passages, they resonate so true to me and have made me realize I was carrying guilt about my own caregiving experience. It's comforting to read you had similar thoughts. Another cousin wrote, thanks for giving my thoughts words. A friend said, as I started reading, I could visualize you and Ma talking. I think instead of Ma, we should call her Guru Ma. Someone else said, when I was reading, it seems as if you were reading for me. And another cousin said, this is the symbol of largest of human emotions. I share these sentiments with you not to claim that I have written a great literary piece of work. It's the opposite. My book is a very basic book of shared universal human emotions, and we all feel the same way. And that's my hope for this book, that maybe people will relate to it and feel less alone on their journeys. Or if they don't have not had that experience or a different experience, maybe they'll get a different perspective. I would like to read one last passage from the book. And cliche is a term that's universally defined as something that's commonplace and trite. But the emotions that I went through and the experiences that I had, even though they're so shared, my having personally gone through them make them cliche no more for me. And this poem sort of captures some of that learning. And I believe it is page 110 in the book. Life is teaching, and I am learning. I am learning that not all challenging times are bad times. They can even be the best of times. I am learning that the more I complicate things, the more complicated they get. I am learning that sometimes I have to win by letting others win. I am learning that when I am committed, life finds a way of supporting me. I am learning that when I focus on how unfair life has been, I miss all opportunities to be grateful. I am learning that the moment I put myself first, it is game over. I am learning that I do not have to be the best, but I do have to do my best. I am learning that I can only do what I can do. I have to let go beyond that. I am learning that when I think about exhaustion and fatigue, I get tired. I am learning that adversities, I beg your pardon, are worthy of my undying gratitude. They transform me. I am learning that the darkest moment is the brightest opportunity for growth. I am learning that to be needed is a blessing, to not need an even bigger blessing. I am learning that all any one of us wants to do is actually to make a difference. I am learning that there is a lot of freedom in not having a choice. I am learning that as soon as life feels bad, look for the lesson. It is always there. Thank you. The Since I have been talking about my journey and the book, people always ask me, what do you want people to take away from your book? And some of it I've shared that it's a shared journey, and my hope is that when people read this, they will feel less alone on their solitary journeys. I also talked about earlier about our humanity. I was so surprised that uh, the emotions that fatigue and exhaustion and frustration can bring out in you. But that's being human, to accept that and to learn to forgive yourself so you can conserve energy and learn to move forward. The uniqueness of our circumstances will guide how we show up for our loved ones. My situation was extreme, and so was my solution, that I quit my job and I moved to India. But everybody's circumstances are unique. How they show up for their loved one is going to be perfect for their own stories. I also want people who are being taken care of to know that they're not a burden, because my mother was not a burden. They are being cared for because they are loved. And last, I go back to my most precious gift that life gave me, is that not all challenging times are bad. They're just tough. And that was so insightful because it shifts a perspective of how you relate to challenges, from being victimized or disempowered to something that's very empowering. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I hope you'll indulge this one slide, because this is a 40-year partnership with my husband, Ramesh Harjani, and this journey would neither have been possible nor amazing without him. And often I wondered when I was in India, is my decision to be a caregiver going to be at the cost of this? But I'm really happy to report that it wasn't. And my best friend and we're still really happy and together. And I thank you, and I hand it back to Tanya. Yeah, please. We can share the mic.
So thank you. Your honesty is incredible. Um, I was wondering what made you decide to take your notes on a phone? And I'm not a person who journals much, but more recently I have been trying to, and I need to write in my own handwriting to connect with myself. But you're connecting with your phone, and I just find that remarkable. Is it just the convenience?
Thank you for that question, Tanya. And it's a great question. I, like you, am a paper and pen person, but I was a 24/7 caregiver. And this device was always with me. And I started with an app called Evernote, and then I moved to Notes, that's in iPhone. And I started by, I don't rely on my memory anymore, because if you have a thought, within seconds, it's like, oh, how was that? What was I thinking? Because that was good. I wanted to capture it. But there was never enough time to go find a paper, write it down, scribble, scribble, scribble. The phone's always there. And I would capture sometimes just a couple of words to trigger that memory. But then as time went on, I got quite comfortable journaling on my phone. And actually, I continue to do that till date. I still write with paper and pen because I love beautiful pens and I love beautiful notebooks. I collect them. But this is really good because you're on a walk. You can use your voice. At home, when I was with mom, I did not use my voice because I didn't want anyone else to hear my thoughts. But if I'm alone, I will dictate or I will just type a couple of words and then come back and elaborate so I don't lose that. So I used it more than a journal as a capture tool so I wouldn't lose my thoughts. Yeah.
So I'm also curious if your mother was aware that you were using your phone for self-care, to write for self-care. Did she realize that?
Another good question. She knew I was writing because she had figured that out and she would ask me sometimes what I'd written, and if it was something that would make her sad, I would not share it with her, and I would say something like it's an incomplete thought, I don't want to share it yet. But if it was something philosophical, I would share it with her, or something uplifting, I would share it with her. So she knew I was writing, but I don't know if she necessarily thought that that was a coping mechanism because I didn't realize it was a coping mechanism. Somewhere down the line, it occurred to me that's what I was doing. And then as I started putting my manuscript together, when I came back and I would share something I'd written, somebody would say something, and it would trigger a memory that I wrote something about this, and I would share that passage with them. And then my husband, a couple of close friends, they said, maybe you should share this, and that's how the book was born. But um, yeah, so that's when I started doing some research, and I realized, okay, journaling is part of self care, but it was just a natural, instinctive thing that I did because I could not, and I think it's a human need to get thoughts out of your system or somewhere for them to land outside of your mind or head. And because I could not give voice to those thoughts, I gave words to those thoughts, even if it was for an audience of one me. And I think that's kind of how but mom, I don't think realized that it was part of self care because I didn't realize it was part of self care.
So she had no idea that you were going to make a book. She couldn't have
No.
possibly known that.
Uh, she encouraged me to write always. My father was a published author. He was also a lawyer. So he had uh, a book that was sort of like a treatise in the field of employment law. But his last book, I remember, he passed away very early in 97. And a couple of years before that, there was the O.J. Simpson trial. I don't know if you all recall that. And he was visiting us in the United States. And he started doing research and he started working on a book on the American jury system. And he kept perfecting it and perfecting it and perfecting it because the research never ends and it never got published. And so my mother, she thought I had a lot of my father in me. And I'm very privileged to say if that's what she thought. And and she kept saying, you write well, you write well, you should write, you should publish. So I think that's where I don't know how, but her last words to me was to write. And those were her last words. So it must have been really important to her that I engage in this activity.
So were you in the habit of journaling before that? Have you done any journaling in your life?
Not really, just random thoughts. I'm a random rambler. And I think so. The title is really, really apt, Random Ramblings of an Ordinary Human. So random
Yep.
thoughts and things that sometimes I wish nobody would ever find out that I thunk them. So, but I'm sure, I hope I'm not alone in that.
So for anybody who has not read this book, it is so precious, and you can read a couple of pages and set it down and come back and read a couple of pages and set it down because it reads just like a journal, and the honesty is so heartfelt, and you have left a treasure. I'm sure your mother is proud of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have any other questions? No? So I should tell you now, I don't have my notes with me. Um, our Kim, can you hand me that with the next programs? Note the other one. Okay, sorry about that. Um, we do have we might have some spaces left over for acupuncture. You have to register, I think, for that online. That's this Saturday. Um, but Thursday, February 29th, we have Reverend Dr. Nancy Koester here. She's going to be presenting We Will Be Free, the Life and Faith of Sojourn Truth. And I think that Reverend has talked at some of the churches locally, and those presentations were really talked highly of. So I think that presentation is also going to be very good during our African American History Month. So thank you everybody for joining us, and make sure you pick up a copy of Postcards from Within. Thank you.